Hello, and welcome to our first fully live Hack 5 episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody Kinsey. I'm a security researcher and host of the Hack 5 radio show and Hackbite. And of course, I have my co-host and fellow hacker, Alex, here to help us answer your questions live today. And of course, we're also going to go back through the Hack 5 comments and find some of the best comments and perhaps some of the most hurtful comments and respond to them live. So if you are joining us for the first time today, this is brand new. We're just doing it for the first time. However, we have been doing the Hacking with Friends show on the SecurityFWD channel for over a year now. So if you want to check that out, we are going to be doing this on, I believe, Hack 5 every Tuesday from now on. So it's great to see everyone in the chat. Great to see everyone here. And we're going to get started answering some questions and also telling you about what we've been up to and the content that we made this week. So Alex, what have you been up to this week? And what do you have in store for content?
Honestly, I've been working on mostly nugget fulfillment, so we have been kind of busy shipping out orders for the Wi-Fi nugget. I've also been working a lot on the Rubber Nugget software, which I covered in my most recent video, which is basically a tool for the Wi-Fi nugget that lets you deploy Ducky script payloads. What have you been up to?
So I've been working on a lot of web application security videos. So I myself have been a Wi-Fi kind of hacker for a very long time. My area has been like Python, Wi-Fi, and that sort of thing, and I really don't have very much experience when it comes to web application pen testing. So what I've been working on is a variety of different things showing off the different ways you can get started with web app pen testing. And one of my favorite resources has been portswigger.net has a really good free academy where they spin up a vulnerable web application for you to attack, but it went down when I was recording a video.
Oh, no.
So if you pass me the nugget, someone was asking, what is this Wi-Fi nugget? Well, Alex has been creating his own really cool platform that is cat-shaped. And it is, this version is the S2 nugget that's based on the ESP32 S2. And I use this as a basis for building a vulnerable web application. So you can attack it and it lights up and gets excited when you guess correctly. And I also did an episode on that. So I'll cover that in just a bit, but I've mostly been working on using OWASP Zap, using Burp Suite, and then using pure Python in order to show off how to get started with exploiting a vulnerable web application. So that's what I've been focusing on mostly.
Nice. Yeah, a more extensive explanation of what the Wi-Fi nugget does.
Oh yeah, and you can, if you're curious, you can go to wifinugget.com.
Yeah, we'll drop that in the chat somewhere. It's basically a hardware platform, as you can see, that has a built-in screen, buttons, and also multicolored NeoPixel LED that you can use for stuff like hardware development or practicing stuff like Wi-Fi hacking. That's mostly what we've been exploring recently, creating different tools that you can use to practice legally hacking Wi-Fi, like setting up a NAT router that you can use in order to intercept traffic. What's really cool about this version of the Wi-Fi nugget, which is the ESP32 S2 based one, is it can also do stuff like HID attacks, which means whatever payloads you have for like Ducky script or a Bash Bunny or something would also be compatible with this, and you can use it for USB based attacks.
Which is super cool. And also the first version is in CircuitPython. So the one that we've been shipping out is in CircuitPython. If you know Adafruit CircuitPython, it's super easy to get started with. So if you want to tweak it, add things to it, it's really cool that CircuitPython lets you also work with Wi-Fi on the microcontroller, so you can add like a web interface and do all this other cool stuff. There's really lots of stuff you can do with it. So that's really awesome. So if we switch over to my screen, I just want to go really quickly through our last couple videos. My last video was on bypassing brute force protection with Burp Suite. And the number one question I got on this was, is this going to work when I try to log into my girlfriend's Instagram? Or why doesn't this work when I try to log into my girlfriend's Instagram? So, want to be clear here. Everything I've been showing is a lab. I'm not trying to show you guys how to break into a real service, and perhaps that's why I didn't get my YouTube play button when Nullbite hit the correct number. So a little bit of that misunderstanding that like I'm not trying to show you guys a technique that will get you into any account, but I will show you a technique that will allow you to find accounts that are poorly secured. And for penetration testing and for doing ethical hacking, this was, I thought, a very fun video. So this uses Burp Suite, and Burp Suite is a commercial tool for web application pen testing that's lots of fun. The community edition is free. It's great. However, it is slow, and it's slow on purpose. They deliberately like slow it down in order to make it so, you know, maybe you buy the premium one, but there are free alternatives. So I explored those in my other videos. So I also had brute forcing vulnerable web apps with Python, and this actually features a little bit of the original nugget. So if you have any questions, by the way, about any of these topics, feel free to drop them in the chat and we will try to answer them as they come in. But you can see here we have the original Wi-Fi nugget here. And this is a video where I found that Portswigger's lab was down. I couldn't access it, so I couldn't even do the video I wanted to do. So I made a CircuitPython web application to make it easier for people who are in a similar condition to use any ESP32S2 microcontroller or a Wi-Fi nugget if you want to set up a vulnerable web app and just attack it and not get in trouble, because you know it's deliberately vulnerable. You're supposed to attack it, and it's meant for you to learn. And in this, I just used pure Python because my really good friend Arsenis went ahead and solved it using pure Python when I thought he was going to do something fancy like using OWASP Zap or Burp Suite, and instead he solved it with just Python. So I thought that was super cool. And if you've ever wondered how you can brute force a login with pure Python, this is a really great video. And unfortunately, again, one of the top questions was, why can I not use this to log into my girlfriend's Instagram account? So again, and questions like, can't you rate limit the API and block repeated attempts from the same client? This is actually a good question. So this is the first one I'm going to take, if you don't mind. For this example, would rate limiting make it so that it's no longer possible to brute force into a web application? And my answer would be yes, it totally would. However, there's some things you can do, like setting the forwarded by flag, which is meant to make it so that load balancers and proxies aren't blocked accidentally when trying to block somebody who's using it. So you can use sometimes this flag to get around that sort of IP address ban if you do too many wrong attempts. But there's also other ways of sneaking around brute force protection, which I cover in my next video. So the last video I did, and then we'll kick it over to Alex, was OWASP web app hacking. So in this example, I brute forced a stay logged in cookie. So by figuring out the way that one of these stay logged in cookies was constructed, I was able to brute force a user's stay logged in cookie and break into their account. And I did this using OWASP Zap, which is super cool, super easy, totally free, but the documentation, frankly, kind of sucks. So I had to spend an entire week figuring out how this thing worked, and every time I tried to look up a low-level thing, how the default example worked, the video trying to show me how it worked would be 7 years old, which I don't trust at all, because for software, 7 years is ancient history. So I really wanted to make a good, up-to-date, modern video on how to use OWASP Zap, because it's super powerful and super cool, and it is free. And I just feel like the only barrier is not a lot of people maybe know how easy and cool it is to use, because I would say this is right up there with Wireshark for me in terms of how useful it is, how cool it is, and how much stuff you can do with it, and also how overwhelming it is when you first open it. So over on Alex's side, I believe that your first episode, or the last episode, going back 3, was tracking Wi-Fi devices from the air with a war-flying drone.
Oh yeah, that was an exciting one. We actually did this experiment months and months ago when we were on vacation somewhere. So Kody had a crazy idea to strap an ESP8266 to the bottom of his drone to see if we were able to basically use it to pinpoint the location of Wi-Fi networks or devices or things like that. So the basic rig that I set up was an ESP8266, which is the same Wi-Fi microcontroller that we feature on our D1 Wi-Fi nugget. Mm-hmm. So we hooked one of those up to an SD card module. If you want to skip ahead in the video, I think there's maybe the rig somewhere or another.
Oh,
I think it's somewhere towards the beginning.
Towards the beginning.
Perhaps. Ooh, there it is.
Ah, there it is. Yeah.
I think.
If it loads,
yeah.
There we go.
Ooh.
Yeah, so we have a D1 Mini.
D1 Mini, which is the Wi-Fi microcontroller. We have an SD card module somewhere or another for logging Wi-Fi data. We also have a GPS module, which you can see.
It just keeps going right there.
It just shows up for a second.
Yeah. But you can see it's just a very small package that goes there.
Yeah, so it's basically just a cheap Wi-Fi microcontroller you can source for under $5 on something like AliExpress, a GPS module, SD card module. And we set it up with a war driving tool that I made for the ESP8266, which you can find linked on this video. We strapped it to the bottom of this drone and just flew it around a park, I think for a 3-minute duration for the entire flight. And Kody was piloting the drone. I had a Wi-Fi access point set up, as well as our friend Christian at 2 opposite ends of the park. But using this rig, we were able to successfully pinpoint the exact locations that these 2 devices were set up at. So It was fairly successful. We do have plans for implementing war driving on like the S2 or maybe even on a future like SMD version, even including GPS, so that way your nuggets loaded up with war driving software. That'd be pretty cool.
All right, so one question from this video is, okay, when Wi-Fi networks were open, I cared and used them. Now, who cares? Everything is secure. I use my phone and could care less about Wi-Fi anything. What am I missing? Well, I would say in this particular example, we were able to find basically someone's cell phone by scanning around and looking for their MAC address. And that's really cool because it means you can do aerial surveillance of a Wi-Fi device, and you could also extrapolate this to Bluetooth. So lots of cars have Bluetooth stereos, lots of people have Bluetooth headphones or other devices that never change their MAC address. So by getting the MAC address of a device that someone has with them all the time, their phone, their laptop, their computer, if it doesn't change, you can surveil them from the air and basically be able to figure out where that person is at any moment using a really cheap drone. So I would say that's pretty crazy. I mean, if that doesn't surprise you that it's so cheap to have basically what I would assume to be like a government style surveillance program, then I'm sorry that I can't wow you more than that.
Yeah, it's a pretty dispensable tool. Like the entire rig itself costed somewhere around like $15 just
minus
for the
drone,
component.
of course. The drone was not $15, but the actual little ESP module was. You could make for about $15, and you can track devices like that, which is pretty cool.
One of the coolest like tracking configurations I did with an ESP8266 was I set up like 3 of them at opposite ends of like a park and used it for triangulation, and I was able to pinpoint like the exact location of a Wi-Fi device in any of the 3 coordinates. So they're pretty cheap, and you can use them for some pretty cool stuff.
All right, I'm going to take some questions from the chat.
Sure.
Thank you, everyone, also to who is in the chat. One just says, greetings from Portland, Oregon. You guys are awesome at Hack 5. Oh, thank you. I used to live in Portland. I moved, though.
Nice.
Also, another question is, are there any WPA3 vulnerabilities? Yes. So my friend Matthew Van Hoff is one of the best researchers when it comes to WPA3 vulnerabilities and found a lot of the original vulnerabilities that were found. So to sum it up, like some of the vulnerabilities with WPA3 allow you to overwhelm a device that's running WPA3 like a router that has limited resources by saturating it with a bunch of handshakes that are expensive for the device to kind of process. So by saturating it with all these handshakes, you basically force it to use up all of its processing power and make it unable to communicate any further. So it's basically a denial of service attack against the router by using up all of its processing resources. So that's a really cool and really weird attack against WPA3 that I think is really awesome. So there's some other pretty serious flaws with WPA3, but none of them are really as bad as WPA2 yet. So if you're looking for like a killer, like be able to get someone's password, the answer is probably like downgrade attacks, frankly.
Yeah.
I see a lot of attacks that are designed to downgrade from WPA3 down to WPA2. So if you have a router that supports both and you just pretend to be a device that doesn't support WPA3, then boom, you're back to working with WPA2, which has lots of really well-known flaws. So really good question.
I think one of the other cool ones you told me about, I don't know if it's WPA3, but you could basically like set the communication rate to something that's like extremely slow, so that way the devices just like can't talk to each other.
So one question here also is, what's the difference between the deauthor from Spacehoon and the Wi-Fi Nugget? Is the Wi-Fi Nugget more advanced? Well, the deauthor is actually a piece of software that runs on lots of different pieces of hardware, including the Wi-Fi Nugget. So the Wi-Fi Nugget is a piece of hardware which supports lots of different projects that are available for the ESP8266 or the ESP32S2, which includes on our end the, the Rubber Nugget, which is a platform that delivers Hack5 Ducky script payloads. The Honey Nugget, which is a Wi-Fi honeypot, which allows you to detect if someone's poking around your network. And then also the Nugget Invader,
which as well as the Defender,
which is an attack platform, and soon the Nugget Defender. So, and on top of that, you can also run Spacehoon's deauthor on the Wi-Fi Nugget. So the Wi-Fi Nugget has the ability to run a bunch of different really cool projects, which frankly is great if you like to try out different things, but maybe not commit to running one project all the time, because maybe you want to, have a Wi-Fi honeypot sometimes, and maybe you want to run human interface device attacks other times. It's easy to kind of switch it up, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. Also, thanks to like the recent tutorials you're doing in like CircuitPython, for anyone that's like looking to get into hardware development, the Wi-Fi Nugget's like a great platform for that. And there's also really cool Wi-Fi stuff you can tool around with directly on it through Python.
How did you start hacking or start your cybersecurity career? That's a question we get a lot. So for me, I started in cybersecurity not knowing very much about hacking, just by getting a job where I was writing at Nullbite articles as I would learn things. So I would go and I would have my Raspberry Pi and I would figure out how to do something new on it by following like a kind of bad guide online that maybe was missing a bunch of steps and was like almost impossible to follow. So I would just take notes on everything that I learned and everything that didn't work. I would write up my own article on it, and I just made it. And I felt like a total poser at first because I was learning things for the first time and then turning around and teaching other beginners too. But I never really pretended to be some big authority or some like hacking master. I really was just trying to be humble and just let other people know like this is super cool. If I can do it, you can do it too. And that this is super fun and accessible. So that ended up really resonating for me as a good position to be almost like a translator between total beginners and then, you know, these things that seem like you might never be able to do them, but actually aren't that hard if you're really interested and know where to look. Alex, what about you?
I pretty much started in the same place, actually. I think some of my like earlier videos on like my personal channel were just like random things I was like trying to do, like for instance, break the encryption on what was it? I think like parental restrictions or something silly like that on like an iPad, and I was like, oh cool, like all the online resources for this are like poorly documented, so like why not make a video showing like how I was able to successfully do this. And then soon enough, I think I got into hardware hacking first before I moved on to other interests like Wi-Fi hacking or other areas of cybersecurity. But I wanted to see if I could do something crazy like port Wi-Fi over to my graphing calculator, which I was able to do. So most of my hardware knowledge came from trying to hack like TI-84 calculators, which soon grew into working with microcontrollers, Wi-Fi microcontrollers, and then learning how to do other stuff like Wi-Fi hacking in Linux and such.
So we also have a comment from Deathstroke that says, I feel like this is pre-recorded, to which I have a follow-up question. How does it feel to be wrong?
Yeah.
That's all. And then we also have a comment from Troy. I got the smoothest nuggies you've ever seen. Well, that's great.
Whip them out.
Thank you for supporting the Wi-Fi Nugget project. We appreciate that.
Wait,
another person says, what a baby, stickers you have on laptop. Thank you so much. So a lot of people ask us about the stickers we have on our laptop. Some of mine are from projects that I really like. You'll see that there's like a Kismet sticker in here, and then there's some stickers from some of my favorite hackerspaces, and also some stickers from my favorite researchers or other projects that I'd like to support. So if I were to sit down at a coffee shop and another hacker or another programmer were to sit across from me and look at my stickers, it says, I like doing bad Wi-Fi stuff. You should turn off all wireless devices while sitting near me. And that's pretty accurate, honestly. What would you? Oh, actually,
I'm actually using your laptop.
This is my laptop too.
Mine.
So yeah, you can see that this computer is designed to also be very intimidating.
It's aggressive.
Yes, I would say it's aggressive, but it also has some really cool stickers. The most asked about sticker is actually this one. This one is from a Norwegian hackerspace called HackerYet. And I got to visit there while I was doing some training for journalists in Oslo, and they were super cool, and I really enjoyed it. So that's my favorite sticker. Not that you asked; you just called us a baby for having stickers, so that's fine. Another question: is Darren gone? No, Darren was actually supposed to be on this stream, but also Darren's extremely busy because I don't know if you've seen how many products Hack5 has released lately, but it's been a lot. So Darren is extremely busy, and that is why we have picked up this stream, because frankly, we've been doing it for a while, and because we put out so much Hack5 content, we love getting on with all of you guys and being able to answer your questions. So no, Darren is not gone, and in fact, he's supposed to be our guest on the next stream. It was just a little bit complicated to set this up for the first time and also have on a remote guest. So we just didn't want anything to go wrong and waste all your time. So yes. All right. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the questions that we had on our videos this week. So Alex, you want to pull up the first one?
Sure. All right. This one says, is this the same guy on Nullbite? Something pretty similar. Both guys don't blink at all.
Am I the same guy on Nullbite? And okay. I have to say, everyone, like, thank you very much for making the one thing that comes out of doing Nullbite be that I don't blink when I'm nervous.
You got off easy.
I did get off very, very easy. So yes, it is me. I am now on Hack5. We have a new show called Hackbite instead of Nullbite. Isn't that interesting?
Wow.
And surprise, surprise,
the same guy
is
too.
Almost the same, even the same guy.
Wow.
How strange. So a lot of people are confused by that, but frankly, the parent company of Nullbite, who owned the channel and owned the Wonder How To website, of which Nullbite's a part, just like ran out of money and like won't sell it to anyone. So like a bunch of people have gone up and tried to buy it from them, and they're just like $500,000. And everyone's like, this content is getting older every day. Like, what are you doing? So, you know, I don't know what's going to happen to that. It's frankly really weird to see a channel that's even a little bit bigger than Hack5 that has all my work on it for the last several years just like out there. But yeah, they don't seem that interested in selling it for a reasonable price. So like no one, I know like our friend Marcus Hutchkins was like looking at even buying it, and they said no. They wanted like a ton of money that like kind of wasn't reasonable. So yeah, we would love to be posting on Hack5, but yeah, things got weird over there. So now our new home, Nullbite. But things got weird on Nullbite, so now we're over on Hack5 with the new Hackbite show. And of course, we also do Redia, which is a separate show. Some people don't understand the difference. We have a whole team that gets together and writes a script and does kind of a bigger picture idea with the Redia show that we do, which we usually do about once a month because it's a lot of effort. We have one coming up very soon. And then we also have our Hackbite episodes, which are, as you notice, very similar to Nullbite. So that's what happened, just setting the record straight. And since then, Hack5 has been a really, really wonderful home for us and has helped us bring up new creators like Alex, who got to do his first series on Hack5. Yep. And I've been really proud of seeing how far he's come. So thank you also everyone else who's been so welcoming. And everyone who's been creepy, stop it.
Yeah, please.
All right, let's take another question.
Someone asks what your opinion on certifications would be.
What's my opinion on certification? So I don't have any certifications, but I think that if you're coming from like nowhere and you know your stuff, and you have the money, they're not a bad way to show that you're like dedicated to your craft, you're staying up to date, and you're making sure, you know, that you can guarantee a certain level of proficiency in core topics. That's what I think they're useful for. I'm a specialist, so for me, I'm like almost never going to be asked to do things that are outside my wheelhouse because I go really deep on a couple topics. You could ask me about those. I will know a lot about them. But if you ask me about like general security practices, really like web application security as of a month ago, I really didn't even know where to start. You know, sometimes certifications are not necessarily necessary for like a specific job that you're doing if most of what that certification is goes outside the scope of the job. So I really have mixed feelings about it. They haven't benefited me personally at all, but I know people that will swear by them. So I would say there's ways around them if you don't have the money, because frankly, I've never had the money to get like a SANS like anything, you know. But do I think that the accreditation, whatever else, is good? Like, yeah, and I think the people there are good at what they do and they offer like a genuinely good service. It's just like, in my opinion, perhaps a little too expensive for some people to just have as like an option for employment when you could just show off that you know your stuff in a different way, because that's really all it's doing.
Yeah, I think it's just like an easy way, like at a professional level, for them to gauge like your competency in like a certain area. Obviously, like I don't have any certifications, but I have kind of like, I guess, a track record that I could prove through like videos or other stuff like that. So it just really depends like what you're trying to get into.
Someone says that they want to bring back the Hack5 IRC. If you'll maintain it,
I didn't even know there's a Hack5 IRC.
I'll get on it.
Nice.
How do you spell the Redia show? R-E-T-I-A. R-E-T-I-A. Good question. Because also, anytime we just like type it and send it to someone, they assume it's Ratia, and they think it's like a clothing, like an urban clothing line.
Yeah, that sounds cool and hip.
Which I would buy.
Yeah. Are you wearing your Redia shirt right now?
Oh, am I?
Are you?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. So
show it off.
I hope I don't pull up too much and I just flash the camera. Yeah, so one of the designs we did, if you're an electronics nerd, you might like this one, is like an all-seeing eye that's made out of electrical diagram stuff. So it's also, I believe, the sticker right here.
My shirt's just boring. It's blue.
Well, why were you showing it?
I don't know.
What are you doing? We're not all just like taking off our
I thought we're just showing off our fits. All right. I saw Alex in a video with a hoodie. That scared me. Well, watch this. You're about to see. All right.
And someone else says that they've been following me for years on Nullbite and my old YouTube channel and thought that was me. Taught me a lot. Thank you so much. Often I hear people who got into cybersecurity or realized that they could do something they didn't realize that they could do by just finding a video and following it themselves and realizing, hey, this is something that I can do. Maybe I am that kind of person after all that can do this sort of work. And that's really cool to hear. So yeah, thank you.
Yes. Okay, Chris, I like this comment. Please make a Hack5 IoT underwear. Okay, which Hack5 themed animal would you like to see on the underwear?
Okay, all right. Let's go ahead and take another question from the YouTube video.
Fine, maybe Hack 5 sucks. Those would be cool.
No, come on. Let's go.
fine.
Let's go.
Hi, I would like to know what is the best option to turn a Raspberry Pi into a server for personal use. What are you trying to do with it? Like file serving, web serving? Kind of depends, but let us know in the comments.
Yeah, so like I would say if you're just looking for the best thing to do with Raspberry Pi, my favorite thing to do still is just make it into an Octoprint server if you have a 3D printer, because it's literally the most useful thing I've ever done. But turning a Raspberry Pi into an SDR intercept device is really cool, and it's relatively easy, and I've always really liked doing that. So with a RTL SDR, you can connect it to Raspberry Pi and make it into like a SDR server, which is pretty fun, but there's lots of different things you can do. It just, as Alex said, depends on what you're wanting to do with your Raspberry Pi. Here's a Raspberry Pi related question as well. You know the video you did about the hijack with Raspberry Pi 3, will it work, radio hijack with Raspberry Pi 3, will it work on the Raspberry Pi 4? This is probably the most illegal video that I've ever done.
Nice.
So let's talk about it. So a while ago, I did a video, a long time ago, I did a video on Nullbite about how with a Raspberry Pi, you can, if you were to theoretically attach a wire to it, turn it into a radio broadcaster. So you can actually broadcast radio over like FM, and you can hijack over a short distance a legitimate radio program. So what I did was I created you can just use the pin of the Raspberry Pi without attaching a wire to it, so the effect is limited to about a foot, and that makes it so you're not interfering with other radio signals and you're not broadcasting anything especially bad outside this little box, so it's okay. Theoretically, anyway. Right. But you can just use the pin on the Raspberry Pi as the antenna, and you can override nearby radio receivers if you broadcast on the same frequency. So what I did to test it was I played an emergency radio broadcast that North Korea was sending nuclear missiles towards the United States, which made it sound, very scary. And I tried to play that over a radio receiver, and I was able to get it to work in my car. I was able to get it to work in many other different places, provided I was close enough with the Raspberry Pi. So this is because the Raspberry Pi is able to do some really ugly radio stuff in order to simulate what it needs to in order to broadcast a radio signal. And of course, for social engineering, this is pretty cool. But it's also illegal as heck to add an antenna to this, because it broadcasts without any sort of filter. And if you were to look on an SDR, you would see the signal is repeated over and over and over and over in different bands that you're not supposed to be broadcasting on, because they can interfere with all sorts of stuff, or they're reserved for certain things, and you're not supposed to be broadcasting on it. So trying this out on a Raspberry Pi with just the pin on the Raspberry Pi without connecting anything, probably totally fine, in theory, anyway. Because it's only radiating over about a foot. But trying to attach a whole antenna that's cut to the right length, you can actually broadcast this over a couple city blocks, which is pretty crazy with a little low power device like a Raspberry Pi. Do not ask me how I know. So again, this is not something you're going to want to do to the nth degree, because putting a filter on this and whatever else is a little complicated and makes the project a lot harder. But the question was, could you do this on a Raspberry Pi 4? I think you probably can. It just has to do with the way that it's modulating on the pin. I don't think it's any other sort of hardware exclusive thing. So I believe so, but I have not tried this project again because I got a lot of feedback that this was going to get the FCC mad at me. So I stopped covering this topic. But it is really cool that in an emergency, you can use a Raspberry Pi to broadcast as a radio, and you can also play over the legitimate radio by doing a broadcast signal intrusion, just like the famous Max Headroom broadcast signal intrusion. So that's kind of what inspired it. And it is a really good video on Nullbite, but I can't cover that again because it is kind of illegal.
Best budget RTL SDR dongle. I think it's honestly just branded as the RTL SDR dongle. It's like a generic metal enclosed one. I think it does a whole bunch of different frequency ranges. Do you have any recommendations though? I'll drop it in the chat.
Sorry, I was reading. I would just say the RTL SDR is what I use. It's just simple. It gets really hot, and it drifts when it gets hot. So the frequencies will drift a little bit. But frankly, if you're getting started on a budget, the RTL SDR is where to start, 100%. I really like them. I used to just sit in on roofs in Los Angeles and decode the emergency frequencies on the metro buses, because they don't it's digital, but it's not encrypted. So you can decode all of it. And it's super fun to be able to just listen in on random conversations around the city. Mm-hmm. One question was, what kind of phones do you use and what operating system? I just got a Pixel and installed Graphene OS on it. So we both use iPhones, of course.
Yeah, iPhones are the best.
Yeah, because we were told that they are impossible to hack. So no, so I use a Pixel 4 XL, I believe, and I do that purely because of the crazy little radar like chip they have on it that I think is super cool and endlessly like want to mess with and think is just like awesome. So I just think the Project Soleil technology is really interesting, and like that's why I've stuck with it, even though it's kind of old now. And it also has an infrared camera. So we were doing a piece on detecting hidden cameras, and my phone's the only one that can actually scan around a room and find sources of infrared light that aren't supposed to be there if there's like an IR camera that's hidden. So for detecting, for the radar chip, and then also for the ability to detect like sneaky IR sources, that's why I picked mine. Alex, why did you pick your very most favorite of phones?
I honestly picked it on a whim because like one day I was with my friends and I was like, hey, do you know what'd be really cool if I just like flip my phone? It'd be really funny if it just like broke, right? And then I immediately proceeded to drop it down like a 10 set staircase, broke my phone, and then found myself needing one before we had to like fly to a completely different state like a few days later. So then like on a whim, I just shipped a random phone from Amazon that would get there in 2 days. I picked a Nord OnePlus something or another. I forget what model it is. It honestly holds up pretty good. It's running Android 10 or something or another. Can't do infrared, but still pretty cool.
All right, real quick, what Linux distribution do you use?
Ubuntu.
On a Raspberry Pi, I like to use Manjaro. Manjaro is really cool. It's also, you get to say that you run Arch without actually having a bad time, which I think is a nice compromise, It
comes out of the box with like stuff installed, right?
Mm-hmm. Nice. It's really nice. It's really nice. And you can load a lot of security tools from the Black Arch repo directly onto it if you're willing to let your operating system slowly die of dependency issues as conflicts emerge. But I mean, it works pretty well. I like it. So one question is, what can you do a video on changing your MAC address on Android phones to avoid being tracked by Wi-Fi? So this is a big problem because a lot of devices were tracked via their MAC address for a long time by retailers and other people who wanted to sell information about your purchase history, where you are, all this stuff. So Android devices started randomizing their MAC addresses, but they started doing it in kind of a crappy way where it just like, it wasn't very secure, and they still used their real MAC address when they would connect to a Wi-Fi network. So every time they would go to a home network, they would use the same MAC address. And the problem is, I, as a hacker, can create a bunch of fake Wi-Fi networks, and then I can start tracking people by which MAC address they respond to that network from. So that creates another kind of attack surface for attackers to try to track you still by putting up fake networks and then recording which ones your phone has been to before in order to kind of create like a fingerprint of your device. So there is now a feature on Android that allows you to automatically randomize your MAC address for every time you join a Wi-Fi network. And the problem with this is, if you have someone in our house like our friend Michael, who likes to maybe like set up like things to track devices that are joining the network, it looks like 100 Android devices have joined over the course of a month, because your phone's going to be randomizing its MAC address, and that makes it very difficult to whitelist it or say like this device is allowed to join a network. So there are some trade-offs here. You can absolutely now, on an Android phone that's fully up to date, enabled full MAC address randomization, which makes it, as a hacker, way harder for me to distinguish your device. But at the same time, it now makes it way harder for an administrator to say, hey, this device is allowed to be on the network. So there's definitely trade-offs when it comes to being able to track devices, because how are you going to be able to tell if there's a new device on your network or not if your like cell phone is changing its MAC address every single time and you're like looking at this trying to look for a new device? You're going to have very little information about what's what, and it would make it relatively easy for somebody to spoof their MAC address and fool you if even if that was what you were worried about. So
I think a more common thing is without like full randomization, there's also just a feature that allows it to broadcast like a random MAC address before it's actually connected to Wi-Fi. So if it's emitting like probe requests or something like that, it's probably going to look random. But when you try to like authenticate to the Wi-Fi network, then it'll reveal its like actual MAC address, which I think would make it easier for filtering.
All right, so one question we have is, when do you accept the title of hacker? I wrestle with calling myself a hacker. So, I mean, one thing, security researcher is a specific title where you're doing research and you're like into security. But like a hacker is just somebody that's like taking things and doing things that the creator didn't originally intend with them. And I think that lots of people fit that description. I would say there's a lot of people that don't even touch security that are like makers and hardware hackers that are totally hackers. Like they have hacker skills. It's just a different flavor of hacker. And try, like, depending on what you're interested in and what kind of hacking you do, I don't think you need to wait to call yourself a hacker. If you are doing, what hacking is, which is finding new ways to use things that other people maybe haven't thought of, or that that is not the standard way to use it. So if that's what you do, I think you're already a hacker. What would you say?
Yeah, I think the word hacker is like honestly blown out of proportion a lot. It's like not about learning how to use certain tools to like a level of competency or something, or like knowing how to do a specific like hacking thing. It's just, do you like to break things? Do you like to use things in unconventional ways that they weren't designed to? And yeah, as you mentioned, you could also be a hardware hacker. There's a whole bunch of different flavors. It honestly depends.
So one question was, I want to protect my friends and family by learning white hat hacking. What are the best 3 methods for learning? Thanks for sharing. I would say very frequently, there's not very much creativity that goes into the most common attacks out there. Like they're generally social engineering attacks or attacks that rely on somebody not spotting something that they should be aware of. And user error is the biggest driver of a lot of these attacks or things that can be prevented. Like, are you going to be able to help your friends or family if they're being like, targeted by like the government of Qatar? Like, no, probably not, because I think they have a lot of money.
True.
So like, if it is an attack though that's like going after the lowest hanging fruit, it's easy to help your friends and family become less vulnerable. One thing that I would say is probably a very easy step is password managers. Like it's no longer sufficient to just have a bunch of memorized passwords. Like they're not going to be strong enough to survive a modern attack. So password managers are absolutely a necessity for friends and family. If you can convince them to use them, they will make a big impact on their security hygiene and make it a lot better for them if they are targeted and someone's just looking for a weak password. I would also say, let's see, for friends and family, like doing little things like setting, I really like canary tokens. Like being able to put something like a canary token in your email and know if somebody is going around your email and accessing things they shouldn't be is a nice way of setting little traps that will let you be aware if somebody is doing things that they shouldn't without having to be a security expert. So I think that they, in particular, are a really great example of a public project that you can use for free to maybe like, set a link in your email or something else that you don't want people going into and know as soon as somebody starts poking around. And we've done a lot of videos focusing on that sort of thing. What would you say?
Yeah, I think honestly the biggest like vector that's taken advantage of is just weak passwords or passwords that are like overused. So I don't really have a lot to add to that besides use a password manager and probably different passwords for various accounts you have. Because honestly, that's probably the biggest thing. Yeah.
We also have a comment. They noticed your all colors are beautiful sticker. Lol, pathetic. You don't like colors? It just says all colors are beautiful.
Yeah.
Wow. And I didn't know that one would be. All right. So one question was, hey guys, I'm a fan of your channel. I was wondering what you think of Airtags potentially being used to stalk people. Not sure if it's easy for Android users to detect Airtags following them. So I am an Android user and I have taken an active interest in this because our moderator, Zam, has put an AirTag with us, or given it to us, of course, and was using it to follow us, of course, with permission, so we could kind of study what this is like. And it is actually pretty hard to detect an AirTag, especially if you get one online that's had its speaker purposefully disabled. If you do that, then there's really no way to know unless you run a specific app that you have to download, and it only looks for AirTags for a short specific period of time when you're in the app and running it. I also am not 100% sure if you're acting as an endpoint for Apple's like weird AirTag system while you were doing the scan, but I would be kind of not happy if that were the case.
Oh,
so
wait, it's an Apple, it's an app made by Apple themselves,
yes.
right? Oh, shit,
yeah. So like this is supposed to make it easier for Android users to detect these AirTags, but frankly, it does not do a very good job. So I'm very interested to see what the next step is going to be for Android users, because right now the resources are just not there to make it easy for you to tell if somebody is following you with an AirTag. And I would say Android users are particularly vulnerable to tracking from AirTags right now.
I didn't get to read too much into it, but I actually saw like an open source framework or software or something like that that lets you communicate like with the AirTag network from like a Linux machine or something. I'll probably have to do more research into it, but I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, there was, I saw somebody who was able to basically mimic the AirTag standard and create fake AirTags and then upload arbitrary data to that network by like passing it there, which is kind of cool. And they're like, cool, thanks for the free C2 server.
Nice.
Go on.
Oh, you go on.
All right, so one question was, is there a higher chance of being hacked when your phone is rooted? Yes. It means that any malware that executes on your phone automatically will be able to execute as root, which is basically what most of your phone security is designed to prevent having happen. So if you are someone who's rooted your phone, then you are absolutely going to be more vulnerable to malware or other sorts of attacks than the average user because your phone is fully unlocked. So while that is great for you, it's also great for attackers because it means they can get in there and do lots of stuff without having to do any sort of privilege escalation, which is honestly a pain in the butt. So if you can avoid doing that, then it makes it way easier for attackers, which you don't want to do. So yes, I would say, unfortunately, as cool as it is, rooting your phone does increase your security vulnerability footprint.
Cool. Someone asks, what is a canary token? You've covered a lot of canary token things, and I actually did a recent video, probably not so recent anymore, but I did a video on using canary tokens to detect the Log4j vulnerability. But basically, canary tokens is an online service that you can use. Oh, you're pulling it up.
I'll find it.
Yeah. It's basically a service that you can use to check whether or not a certain link has been pinged. So in the case of Log4j, you can paste this inside of a log4shell exploit string and put this into random like text fields or other things you might think are vulnerable. And if it gets a successful ping to the canary token server, what canary tokens offers is like an email-based thing where they send you a notification letting you know that this link has been successfully pinged. So they offer this for things like detecting Log4j. They also have things to detect if a certain website has been hit or if an image has been viewed. There's a lot of pretty novel use cases for canary tokens.
I've used them for some dumb stuff. At one point, I used them to create like a fake life alert service, so that
Nice.
anytime like a web request was made, it would like automatically send me an email and tell me that I needed to check on Alex and like see if he had a
Oh, I didn't know you
headache.
used. I didn't know you used. canary tokens for that.
Originally I did. Yeah, that was my
Nice.
first step. So if you switch over to my screen, you can see what exactly this is. It's a really simple service. You can use it to generate a web bug token, which means anytime someone clicks on the link, it'll scrape a bunch of data about them. But there's also more. Like the DNS token gathers a little bit less information, but I heard a great story of this being used. It was like a DNS token was put on the root of a server that was decommissioned. And then all of a sudden they had a hit on that server from Russia, like months after they like had scheduled it to be destroyed. So at some point it had been diverted away from where it was supposed to be destroyed and then recovered, and somebody had accessed the root server and then hit this DNS token. So that was a pretty crazy story to hear. Also AWS keys, so if someone's scraping AWS keys and they try to use them, this will alert you. Microsoft Word document, so if you have a Word document that is a kind of like a, you know, just a honeypot and you want to know if somebody steals it, you name it something really juicy, as soon as they open it, it will send you an email. And then WireGuard VPN credentials, cloned website, QR code. This is one of my favorites. Generating a QR code and just seeing who scans it, like why not? Like why not? Like I've done a couple social experiments where just creating these QR codes and then seeing who does it. And then of course they also have Log4Shell and some other really cool stuff as well. So definitely a free, interesting service worth checking out. I use them for a lot of projects and frankly, they're super cool. So.
I think one of the coolest use cases you told me about was there's like a canary token you can embed in like an image link or like a link or something like that. So in channels like Slack, if you paste a link, it'll automatically like render a preview of the website. So you can basically see if someone like viewed a link that you pasted somewhere, if it like automatically renders a screenshot of the page, since it'll like ping the canary token server, which I thought was pretty novel.
Okay, someone called me out. So currently, I don't have time to build a website, so I just made a Linktree. I know. Because like, if you guys want to take down Linktree by hacking, like, people are like, I'm going to hack your website. I was like, if you want to hack Linktree, like, you're just going to upset a bunch of teenagers. Like, nobody else cares.
Right.
So I just set up a Linktree, but I put, like, I was too lazy to buy or set up analytics, so I just put a canary token on the link. So that also caused Twitter to flag my my personal website as a security threat, which I actually think is like some of the best marketing I could get. So so yeah, like I think that is funny, and I will change it soon, I promise. But yeah, I did get called out for that, and I should change it. Okay, let's go ahead and pick another question, maybe from the video.
Sure. Okay, this one's a comment rather, but someone says, it'd be great if there's a comparison between the speed of brute forcing with Burp Suite Community Edition, Burp Suite Pro, Zap, and the Python script. Maybe with other languages too. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah,
the only tool that I've used that's like vaguely similar to that is Midem Proxy. I haven't gotten to touch the others, but perhaps that's something you'd be more well-versed in.
Yeah, definitely. So my 3 videos have covered each one of these topics, and by comparing them, I would say definitely like it's a showdown between OWASP Zap and Burp Suite Professional in terms of which one is faster for attacking these sorts of vulnerable web applications and how easy it is. But Burp Suite Professional is like $300 or something. So like when it comes to OWASP Zap, like it's not slowed down, it's free. Like, and I will say again, the documentation kind of sucks. Like it is hard to get started with it, like sometimes because it's hard to find a good video that covers it, but I find that it, you know, it is really cool. It's worth checking out. I will say though, like, okay, if you're starting on the Portswigger Lab versus the OWASP Juice Shop, Portswigger Labs, you go over there, you like log into your free account, and then all the labs are spun up for you online, and you can do them from anywhere. Super cool. The OWASP Juice Shop is like an application you have to like download and run locally, and like you have to like learn. Like if you're just a web application person and you don't know Docker and you don't know some of this other stuff, like you might get a little pissed off. Like you might be a little annoyed because you just want to get started. So I will say that for educational resources, like Portswigger is like out of the park. Like their stuff is really, really excellent. So that's why Burp Suite is nice, because they have community solutions and they also have like walkthroughs that basically tell you all the steps in order to get it. And I think that that's like a kind of a cut above the OWASP Juice Shop, because for one, you have to host it on like an AWS service or something that like requires money. So I get, you know, it's a paid product, they have better educational resources, but those educational resources are free. So you should definitely check them out, because I use them all the time. Think they're a great resource, and they do kind of make OWASP Zap like Portswigger like edge like a little bit more ahead in terms of like making it easy for beginners to get started. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I definitely like that they have like all their labs set up linearly so you can like follow along, learn new skills and stuff like that. That's real cool.
So one person says, I'm about to take down the internet. Do you guys have any tips? Well, it seems like attacking like the DNS server seems to be what has taken out the internet a number of times. But if you do that, it's not my idea. You already decided to take down the internet. I'm just talking about how I think you probably did it, hypothetically. Please don't do that. I need it. All right, Alex, got another question?
Sure, I'll whip one up. Corey, I need your help. Okay, sorry.
Okay,
All
sure.
right, answer this question, Corey.
All right.
Corey, I need your help, dude. That 2424T antenna arrived, and I would really like to know that tripod you used for your parabolic antenna. I'm assuming they're talking about that huge grid thing that you had. It would be much appreciated. I have 2 tripods, but they only got mounts for cameras. Thanks, dude.
Oh man, we use zip ties, my friend. I'm like pretty sure.
What did you even mount that on?
I'm pretty sure we use zip ties. So we like we found a way to like ram part of the tripod through the parabolic antenna, and then we zip tied it. And that's what we did. So I'm so sorry that there's not an actual piece of equipment that will mount like an alpha wireless, like giant parabolic antenna. But that was a struggle. And I feel sorry for you that you have to do it too, because doing that, we made it look really good, but man, it was not fun getting that antenna to mount properly.
Nice. Someone asks what our favorite snack is as a hacker.
Free
That's
snacks.
a hard one. Yeah,
I like free snacks that I get from social engineering. My favorite snack I've had so far was registering as a press at the RSA conference and then being invited to some very, very fancy like Microsoft dinners that were like trying to sell me like a $500,000 product. And I was just like, that's nice.
Nice.
What about you?
Shoot, right now I'm really feeling chocolate-covered pretzels. That's what I'm craving.
It just for hacking?
Yeah, really gets
right.
me in the mood.
Someone asked, do we use Tails OS for hacking? So a lot of what we do is content production and also prototyping. So because we're not like hardcore into like malware analysis, we don't like Tails OS is like a little heavy for what we do. You know, like if we were going to be doing something where we were super worried about getting breached, then like, yeah, we could use Tails OS. But for just doing like development and like media work, like have you tried to get like Adobe anything running in Tails OS? Please let me know if you have, because I can't. So that's the primary reason why we do not do that. Which VPS hosting is best for botnet hosting? Guys, if you want to get us taken off YouTube, like, or if you're a cop, that's the right question to ask. I'm going to go ahead and ignore that one, but I will say, please keep your questions legal. We're not trying to help you build a botnet. And if you, there's so much competition. If you have to ask us how to build a botnet, how are you going to compete against those guys that have been making botnets for years? Come on.
Yep.
Have a little initiative.
I think first you should start by buying IoT Roombas, as many as you can get.
Oh my gosh! I also love that another person has
my-
honed in
Oh
on the
no,
all
my
colors are
all
beautiful.
colors are beautiful.
So I got this from the. This is actually not my favorite sticker because it's ended up being controversial. I got this many years ago in the Munich C3 hackerspace. So it was from an event they did that was all colors are beautiful, and yeah, people really seem to get offended by it. So if you don't like colors, then I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's on you.
Yeah.
Yeah, yogurt pretzels are pretty good. I'm not really a yogurt guy, but yogurt covered pretzels are okay.
Okay, what was a funny hacking story from when I was a kid? Well, not all the way back from when I was a kid, but when I used to work in a music venue, there was, I was in charge of the network security and a bunch of other stuff, and there was a computer that I had to use that one of the owners of this business would come in and use for personal reasons for long periods of time, and nobody could tell this old lady to get off the computer because she was just allowed to do whatever she wanted. She would just Google stuff. So there's a type of network filtering that allows you to take incoming packets and change them and then pass them on. And what I did was I wrote a little filter that every time it saw the word and, it replaced it with her first name in all caps. And anytime it saw the word the, it replaced it with her last name in all caps. So anytime she would load a website, her name would be in all caps all over it, and she had no idea what was going on.
Nice.
So after a while, she decided that the computer was haunted, and she didn't want to use it anymore, and it solved the problem of not being able to use the word computer.
Nice. I can't think of any that I would want to disclose at the moment.
Yeah, thank you so much for the discretion.
I had a
on
really
that
good one, but then I was like, you know what? No, I don't think so. All right, I'll take a different question.
All right, all right. Also, we have a comment that they're a professional if they say that they use zip ties. I would say a lot of our stuff has used zip ties. All right, let's take another question.
Cool. All right, someone says, hey, Kody and Alex, I would like to see a Zap proxy crack password because Burp Suite takes forever. It doesn't have a separation where you can insert the password. It's a good tool, but lacks proper documentation.
Hey, well, guess what?
That's
I
great.
already did that.
Heck yeah.
I think this comment was from right before I did my video, and this comment was actually why I did the video on OWASP Zap. So
Nice.
Thank you very much for your feedback. We do listen, and every time we do this show and we respond to your questions, we do take that into account, and we use it to decide on which Hack 5 videos we're going to do next. So we listen to you, and here's further proof.
Yep.
One question is, can you make real money with bug bounties? Well, bug bounties are really good ways to get started, especially if you haven't worked in security before. You can show your skills without necessarily needing to show up to an office and impress someone into giving you a paycheck. You can just do the job and get paid. So for a lot of people that might not have experience, this is a great way to get started and show that they can do the work. But is it something that you can immediately jump into and start making like a living wage? Well, that is a lot harder. You know, the broader and less skilled the vulnerabilities are to find, the more competition is going to be out there. So the more specific you are with your skill set, or the more specific you are with what you're hunting for, the better you'll probably do in a bug bounty program. You know, doing Portswigger's lab for like just authentication, then going out and expecting to make a paycheck doing bug bounties, it might not be realistic. But by working with companies like BugCrowd or Hackeroni, you can definitely get started making some money and kind of figure out how much you're going to make by how many bugs you're discovering. So I would say it's definitely worth it to get started, because it does give you provable income doing security work, which you can turn around and use as proof for another job in the security industry, saying, hey, I take this seriously, I taught myself, I found real vulnerabilities that were serious, and I've been paid for them.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of people that make like a sustainable income off doing bug bounties, but I don't think it's like entirely realistic to just like jump in right away and expect to make money off of it. Although there are good resources to learn how to do that, and you can definitely start poking around at like lower security things.
So one question is, how long would it take someone who has no background in hacking to go on to become a professional hacker? Well, that heavily depends on what your background is, because you might not think that other skills will help you in a hacking kind of job, but in actual fact, they totally will. So for example, I have a lot of softer personal skills after working in a music venue for years and years and years, taking people's IDs and telling people that their ID was fake and I was keeping it, and then having them get very, very angry at me and having to not get punched in the face. Turns out being able to talk to people, diffuse situations, and basically do social engineering in order to make sure that my preferred outcome happens in a situation is very helpful in hacking, and has led me to be able to do things that I never would have done. So if I was going to be a pen tester and a social engineer, I might need very little experience in order to bring my past self into the new workplace and be able to do stuff that people who are just getting started wouldn't be able to do. So it really does vary with how much of your past work experience you can bring into your new hacking career. But we did a really excellent episode on Hack5 that I recommend you check out that covers how people have gone into hacking from really weird careers. We had people, that did all sorts of things, from veterinarians to teachers to, all people that you wouldn't expect. So seeing their journey into ethical hacking has been really interesting and will kind of give you an idea of how your own skills can translate into that. But I can say from my perspective, it probably took me like 2 years or so before I was like either writing my own tools or felt confident in the kind of work I was putting out. And some of that was going back to school to learn a little bit about computer science, which was for me a little bit of C++ and Python. Once I understood that, then I understood the difference between compiled and what's the other one? Sorry, I'm...
Interpreted?
Interpreted languages, yeah. The
nice.
difference between compiled and interpreted languages, I understood how to write a little bit in each, and with a guide, I could learn pretty much any of the nuanced skills I needed to learn. So that really kind of rounded out my computer science education, and after that, I got more into like electrical engineering and other stuff that's not strictly hacking related, but kind of worked its way back into that by being able to make hacking prototypes for people to, play CTFs against, and maybe learn their hacking skills without getting arrested.
Nice. Someone asks, how many Hack5 gadgets do you own? All of them.
All of them.
All of them.
Yeah,
we
all
are
of them.
Hack5 ambassadors.
We're stocked up, yeah.
And Nugget ambassadors.
And
we
Nugget
own
ambassadors.
all of the Nuggets.
Yes, we do. So we have a very hefty stock of Hack5 products, and we use them a lot, in which I think Alex did a video on a Hack5 product not that long ago, so we want to start doing more. But between developing our own hacking tool and coming up with scenarios to use each one of the Hack5 products, and it's a lot of work. So one question was, what tools are used for Bluetooth stuff? Because I know there's Aircraft for Wi-Fi, but I don't know much about Bluetooth. Alex, do you know any?
I forget the name of it. I've never actually touched a lot of Bluetooth stuff, but I wanted to play with, I think it's the Ubertooth 1 or something like that, because I just found one randomly in a drawer the other day. So I'll get back to you on that fairly soon, and hopefully have a video on it.
Yeah, so my favorite thing for also messing with Bluetooth is Nordic Semiconductor has a bunch of free apps for development on Android phones. Super, super cool. You can scan devices. I don't know if you remember, but we were in a very rowdy diner in Missoula, and we were able to find out that using this free app, you could locate all the smart TVs and you could initiate pairing. And unfortunately, you need the remote to press OK, but if you had like an infrared blaster, you could actually initiate Bluetooth pairing on smart TVs, and then if you were able to send the OK or the enter symbol, you would be able to actually pair random Bluetooth devices to you, which I thought was super funny. Of course, I didn't actually do it because I couldn't find the remote.
Nice.
And the one thing I don't like about my phone is it doesn't have a infrared blaster, so I can't do some of those cool old school attacks. One question was, do VPN apps for Android provide extra protection in public? It depends on your threat model. So if you're worried about people snooping around in your DNS traffic and like redirecting on a public Wi-Fi network, then yeah, it actually will protect against local attacks against your device and provide a certain layer of protection. If you are worried about the massive amounts of consolidation in the VPN industry that make it really difficult to pick a VPN that hasn't been hoovered up by this company that's had some very, very sketchy like data sales practices and like still continues to make basically malware, then yeah, that's a problem. And that won't be, that's kind of a balance where if you're worried about these companies soaking up your information and selling it, then it's probably a bad idea. But if you just are looking to protect yourself against somebody doing phishing on the local like Starbucks Wi-Fi network, then like you'll probably find that they will protect you against that.
Yeah, the distinction is always like between who you want to see your data. Like, do you want some sketchy company to see it, or do you want to protect yourself against hackers? Or like, do you want to self-host your own infrastructure, but then make everything like traceable to you? It's all a big trade-off.
Someone brags, I hacked my neighbor's Wi-Fi and did 5 years in the Fed house. Well, I mean, I did remember the story of someone who hacked their neighbor's Wi-Fi and used it to send death threats to the Vice President Dick Cheney.
Whoa.
And then got like 5 years in the Fed house. If that's you, then
God.
I've heard of you. But anyway,
I remember that one. It was like,
that
it
one
was web Wi-Fi.
The news title was The Neighbor from Hell. So if that's you, then you're quite famous, sir. All right, so we're running out of time now. Thank you also to everybody in the chat. We have 220 people, which is of course a lot of people to all have in one chat room. So it's you know, it's a little hard to get to everyone's questions, but we have gotten lots of great questions today. And also, if you didn't get your question answered, make sure to leave it on your favorite Hack5 video that we've done, or you can also go on over to the SecurityFWD channel and leave it on the stream broadcast there. But we will be answering questions live next week as well. So thank you to everybody here. And do we have any other final questions we want to answer before we go?
I think we're pretty much good. Someone asked what age I started coding. Honestly, I think like 3 years ago. How old was I? How old am I now? I am 18. 18 minus 3 is 15. Wow. I am pretty good at math.
Okay, well, I started programming at 28, so
nice.
That is it's like a decade after Alex now. Yeah. And then someone says, oh my gosh, that was you that took my fake ID. I have a stack this big. If you were one of those victims, it's because you were rude to me. I always gave it back if you were nice. All right, I think that's just... Have you ever got caught doing something naughty?
Ooh,
so
okay.
There was a time, and this is all a theoretical story, where it was possible to change the music on a Sonos speaker simply by being connected to the same Wi-Fi network. And I used to go to a lot of these kind of like conservative, like Korean coffee shops in Los Angeles that would play like the same kind of like dreary hip hop. And I wanted to spice it up. I thought that there was other better music that could be played. So I started subtly adding things to the playlist because at that time, it did not differentiate between whether you were the person that set up the account or just some random person on the Wi-Fi that happened to have the app for those speakers. So I slowly began progressing the music to be a little bit more and more edgy until I got to an artist called Lady and a song called Twerk. And that took it over the line, and they realized that something had happened. There was a lot of yelling. I was not personally singled out, but I will say, in general, it was very clear that somebody was doing something, and they were not happy about it at all. Again, they could not, and this was just like, I just wanted to, like, I assumed that they, you know, you could contribute to the music if they had left it open. There was no password, like, you know, the app just worked. So I thought it was a feature, not a bug. And it turns out that we did not align, and not everybody likes Lady. So now I know. So yeah, that was the last time that I got caught doing something naughty. But that was not that naughty, and it was also not illegal. So we'll keep it with that, Alex.
It was giving me deja vu about another speaker incident that hypothetically happened.
Interesting. Well,
not too long ago.
Fascinating. Anyway, so thank you everyone who has joined us on our very first live Hack5 chat. I know we don't do a lot of live stuff on Hack5, so if you like this, make sure to leave a comment and let us know. We will do another one of these, and again, we love to answer your questions, so leave them on the video here if you're watching this on replay. And if you want to catch us next time, make sure to tune in on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Well, Mountain Time, but wherever you are, and we'll see you then. Thanks. Bye.